It's been a few weeks since I got out a new episode for y'all, and I hated to leave y'all hanging without any explanation, but there's just really no way I could have given a prior warning that I was going to be absent for a couple of weeks. But over the past couple of weeks, I've been dealing with some health issues, and it's one of those things that I've been dealing with for a long time and it's never going to go away, but sometimes it's worse than others. And if you suffer from fibromyalgia, you know exactly what I'm talking about because we have these flare ups that can literally just put your life on hold. And that's exactly what's been going on with me for about the past 2 weeks now. I've spent a lot of time resting in bed because that's really all you can do for it. And, I've tried different medications, but none of it really helps, and it just leaves me feeling like a zombie. And as much as I love zombies, I don't like feeling like one. But on top of that, and probably maybe because of the fibromyalgia, my back's been giving me fits too. It started a couple of Fridays ago when I bent over into the clothes hamper to get clothes out to start washing, and it has just been all out of whack. But even more so on top of that, over a 5 day period, I lost three cousins. They all passed away. And two of them I didn't know very well, and I don't even remember ever meeting them that I can recall. But my sister Jody, she was very close to them. Now, they were with their family on their way back from vacation in Florida, and this semi truck lost control on I-95. And then that was outside of Jacksonville, and it was kind of near the Florida-Georgia line. But four people lost their lives in that accident, and two of them were my cousins. And it was 14-year-old Jamie, or Riley Sloan, and her mom, 43-year-old Jamie Howard Sloan. And the driver of the semi that caused this accident, y'all, he's been charged with DUI. So he was out there driving his semi drunk. And he's been charged with that DUI and several counts of vehicular manslaughter or vehicular homicide. And he's been identified as 43-year-old Nicholas Dwayne Burrist. So, you know me, I'm nosy. I did a little digging on this Mr. Burrist, and I found out that back in 2014, he was arrested in Newport News, Virginia, and charged with abduction, malicious wounding, stalking, child abuse, and injuries to his daughters, who were 14, 10, and 5 at that time. And his wife was also charged with abduction and injuries to children. And the odd thing is, I'm not finding anything like of what happened with those charges, if they did any jail time or anything like that. But y'all, it's clear that if there was jail time, it wasn't enough. Because honestly, he should still be in jail on those charges. And if he had been, none of this would ever been happened to any of these people that it affected. And I wouldn't be talking about it right now. Now, he's being held without bond at the Camden County Public Safety Complex. And as soon as I know more about what's going on with that case, I'll be sure to update y'all. And then 5 days after Jamie and Riley lost their lives, I found out that a cousin that I had grown up with and was very close to had died in his sleep. It was my cousin Eric, and he was only 4 years older than me, but he had suffered from some heart issues for a little while. And the news was shocking, even though we knew he had those heart issues. And Eric's mom, Barbara, that's my mom's sister, she had died about 5 months before I was born after a battle with leukemia. So Eric and his siblings spent a lot of time with us over the years. And it's like they say, your cousins are your very first friends. Now, Eric is the one that introduced me to Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac's music. And I can still remember seeing him holding up Stevie's Belladonna album for me to see. And I was just like, oh man, she's just beautiful. And then I listened and I just was taken in by her voice. So, yeah, I was an instant fan there. And then around that same time, or maybe a little bit earlier, Eric got me into Star Wars. And I can remember those three cousins of mine and his family were crazy about the Star Wars thing. And I also remember he had this Darth Vader doll, and I hate to even call it a doll because, I mean, it's Darth Vader, but a better word doesn't come to mind at this moment. But anyway, that doll was about 2 feet tall, and it had these buttons on it that when you press them, it would make these different Vader sounds, like the famous breathing noises. And it was so cool, and I wanted one so bad, but my parents never got me one. But yeah, I was an instant fan again. And as a matter of fact, I'm such a fan of the Star Wars thing that I have a Darth Vader helmet tattooed on my right middle finger. And on the right side of that same finger, I have a lightsaber tattooed. But anyway, his memorial service was on Saturday. So that's where I've been lately. Let's get started with tonight's episode.
When you out of here, it could be a nightmare. But for the victim, it is real life. Welcome to Mystery, Murder, and Mayhem. Listen at your own discretion.
Our story starts way back in January of 1982. A little girl named Anne Pham begged her mom that morning to let her walk by herself to school. And because school was only about 3 walks away, the mom reluctantly allowed her, even though she was only 5 years old, to take that little trip alone. But little Anne never made it to school on that rainy morning. And according to People magazine, her teachers never even saw her that morning. And that added a bit of frustration to the investigation because the school was literally just up the street from her house. How could it be that something like this could happen without anyone seeing something that seemed so odd or not quite right, and it happened so fast? Now, let me just say that this was the 80s. I mean, sure, there were kidnappings because, we did talk about the Adam Walsh case and several others. But, yeah, there was the child murders. But it was a time where parents felt somewhat safe about letting their kids take short little trips like that by themselves. I mean, these days we wouldn't do that, but even now, sometimes as an adult, I don't like going places by myself. But back then, things were just so different. Anne's family knew something had to happen very quickly because she wasn't the type to get into the car with a stranger, even if they said they needed help finding a little lost puppy or offered her candy. So what happened? Well, 2 days after Anne was reported missing, Army investigators were looking into a tip they had received about a possible patch of marijuana being grown on the Fort Ord Army base. During their search, they found little Anne's body. She had been strangled and sexually assaulted, including sodomy. Adding insult to this case is the fact that Anne's family had fled from war-torn Vietnam before she was born. They were refugees on a boat that had been intercepted by the U.S. Navy and brought to the States. Anne's family settled in the town of Seaside, California, and 2 years later, Anne was born. They had escaped so much heartbreak, so much tragedy, only to have their precious little girl ripped from them 7 years later. With no leads, the case eventually went cold. But in 2020, the Seaside Police Department started working with the Monterey County District Attorney's Office Cold Case Task Force to try and solve Anne's murder. All possible evidence in the case was sent to labs for DNA testing, and at that time, they were hoping that the renewed interest in the case would spark someone's memory of seeing something the day that Anne went missing. Well, those DNA tests came back with a hit on a 70-year-old Reno, Nevada man named Robert John Lanois. Lanois was 29 at the time of Anne's murder, and get this, he lived just around the corner from the Pham family. He was also a soldier at Fort Ord. But even though he lived in such close proximity to the Pham home, he was never considered a suspect. And it was like he was just hiding in plain sight. And the type of DNA testing that they got the match is somewhat this new type of testing, and it's never been used in court before as evidence. And because usually these types of people just don't do one crime and stop, it was found that he was a registered sex offender. That stemmed from a 1998 conviction of crimes against a minor that happened in Las Vegas. And he had spent more than 20 years in prison on that charge. Well, on Thursday of last week, Lanois was arrested, and he was charged with first-degree murder with special circumstance allegations while he was in jail for a probation violation. And at the time of this recording, he's still awaiting extradition to California from Washoe County. Well, when more details emerge about this case, I'm going to bring you an update. I know that was really short, but I do have an update to a story that I brought you back in May. Now, back on May the 5th of this year, Duncan Alexander Burrell Gordon went missing while he was working his overnight shift at Industrial Recycling and Recovery in Greer, South Carolina. The security camera footage didn't show that he had left the area, so it was unclear what had happened to the man. Well, over a month later, the Spartanburg County Coroner's Office was contacted by the Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office because evidence had been obtained that matched human remains inside of one of the business's pieces of recycling equipment. A forensic pathologist and forensic anthropologist were brought in to aid in this investigation, and after several days of testing, DNA tests came back as a match for Gordon. Now, Burrell Gordon's father has filed workers' compensation suit against the company on behalf of his deceased son. And I've also learned that the company that he worked for has also had some serious safety violations in the past. In 2012, the company had 3 serious violations and 3 other violations, which resulted in thousands of dollars in fines. The inspection file from that period says that the business failed to, quote, evaluate if any areas were permit required confined spaces, including a densifier which employees had to enter to change the blades. Now, that information came from Fox Carolina, and then Fox Carolina also reported that in 2017 the business was cited for failing to provide fall protection for an industrial shredder. And that correction was made, but the company was fined $500 for that. And I should go on to say, too, that Mr. Burrell Gordon's father, he was also employed at that industry, that business, when his son went missing, but he has since left employment there. But I've also read that they're unable to get a death certificate because there's not a body. So I'm not sure exactly what they do in that case. I'm going to look further into it. But anyway, it seems like there will be a lot more coming out about this, because it sounds like some safety violations have happened again at this business. Well, y'all, that's all I have for tonight's episode of Mystery, Murder, and Mayhem. Be sure to come back on Friday evening for an all-new episode of What the Friday. Y'all have a good week.